The weight of houses.
30 days the keeper's voice carried harmonics that Marcus felt before he understood the words. The council chamber fell silent before the keeper of protocols had risen fully from her seat. That silence was itself a message. 300 Aldhari holding their markings at disciplined neutral, which made the neutrality conspicuous. The seat of the matriarch has stood empty for 14 months, the keeper said. Her voice carried the deep harmonics of age. I call the vote of ascension. In 30 days, the 12 great houses will speak. Marcus watched from the diplomatic gallery. He had learned to read this room over months of careful observation, and what he read now was a chamber that had been expecting this moment and had already chosen sides. Lord Asharon inclined his head with practiced serenity. The 4 houses aligned with him, Kalethi, Doresan, Vethani, and the recently uncommitted house Celarin, held their markings at identical neutral tones. Coordinated. Marcus had seen enough Aldhari politics to recognize rehearsal. Kethani received the announcement like weather. Magnificent composure and partly performance. Marcus could tell the difference now. He found Devari in the corridor after. She was walking beside a senior advisor whose markings pulsed with urgent amber. I've been summoned to Kethani's council, she said. Her hands were laced together, a human gesture she had adopted. It meant she was worried. Until the vote, our sessions will need to wait. I'll be here. Something softened in her eyes. Then the advisor called her name and she turned, and Marcus watched her walk away down the amber-lit corridor. He stood there a moment longer than necessary. Then he went to the archives because quiet was what he needed when the alternative was an empty garden.
The informal archive.
The young see further than the old expect. Marcus was reading his way through integration histories at the archives, his 3rd consecutive morning without Avara, when he became aware of someone staring at him without any pretense of subtlety. The young Aldhari had fine-lined academic markings shifting through shades of bright copper, unguarded curiosity. They looked young by Aldhari standards, which could mean anywhere between 40 and 120. You're the human diplomat, they said, not a question. I am. I'm Devari, House Kelorath. I'm writing my thesis on human philosophical frameworks. They tilted their head. You're reading archivist Vethani's integration studies, the 17th edition. It's the most politically biased one. You want the 4th. Marcus closed the 17th edition. I would appreciate the recommendation. Devari crossed to his alcove, pulled a crystal matrix from the shelving with practiced familiarity, set it before Marcus, and sat down uninvited. I have 300 questions about human philosophy, Devari said. I have been waiting to ask a human directly for 2 years. Do you have time? Marcus thought of the empty garden. I have nothing but time. 300 questions turned out to be closer to 3,000. Your species developed over 40 ethical frameworks in less than 3 millennia, Devari said, markings pulsing with rapid copper. The Aldhari developed 3 in 10,000 years. You don't refine, you reinvent. You abandon entire traditions and start from nothing. How do you survive this? We don't always, Marcus said. Philosophical revolutions have costs. Wars, upheavals, generations of confusion. But we prefer the confusion to the alternative, which is certainty. Humans crave it and distrust it in equal measure. Devari leaned forward, markings dimming the way an Aldhari's did before saying something controversial. This is what I cannot make the elders understand. They see your rapid change as instability. But I think you finished becoming what you are a long time ago. You are a species that changes. That is your nature. Not a flaw in your development, but the development itself. How many scholars share your view? Marcus asked. Devari's markings flickered, amusement layered over frustration. More than the senior archivists would be comfortable knowing. There are 12 of us who have been studying human culture for years. Music, literature, philosophy. The elders see your culture as data to catalog. We see it as evidence that there is more than one way to be a civilization. Does this generational divide have anything to do with the succession? Devari went briefly neutral, the Aldhari equivalent of a sharp breath. Then they smiled, and it was the first genuinely mischievous expression Marcus had seen an Aldhari make. Everything in the Concord has to do with the succession, Devari said. Even the things that pretend they don't.
The sisters' calculus.
Duty is a room you cannot leave. Longing is the window. Kethani's council chamber was dense with purpose. Allegiance maps of all 12 houses updated hourly dark stone walls that absorbed sound, every spoken word deliberate. Ivara had been in this room for 3 days. Celerin is the weak point, Ivara said, indicating the 4th uncommitted house. Their lord joined a Sharon for economic reasons, not ideological ones. If we offer a tariff adjustment on the Velisi corridor, we are not buying votes. Kethani's voice was flat, her markings held at the deep blue of absolute authority. If I ascend through purchased loyalty, I ascend already compromised. Ivara had expected this. Kethani was principled in the way only someone who had grown up certain of their power could be. Simultaneously, her greatest strength and the thing that would lose her the vote if Ivara could not find another way. Then we need a Sharon to overreach, Ivara said, shifting approach like water finding a new channel. His coalition holds because he has positioned himself as the voice of caution, not opposition. If he can be drawn into revealing his true aim, which is control, not the matriarch's seat, he knows he cannot claim it, but concessions on human integration, on research funding, on the pace of new species absorption. Ivara paused. He wants the Concord to stop reaching. Kethani was silent. Her markings flickered, a brief expression Ivara recognized as their mother's, someone seeing a pattern for the first time. And one of his conditions, Ivara continued, keeping her voice level, will be a review of all cultural exchange programs with species in the pre-integration phase. The human. Marcus. Yes. She said his name and felt the weight of it, the distance between this room and wherever he was now, the distance between who she was at this table and who she was in the garden. 2 versions of herself, and the succession was forcing her to choose. She walked the corridor to her apartments after the session ended. The amber evening light lay in long rectangles across the stone floor. She passed the turning that led to the river garden and did not take it. If she went there, the flowers would show what she was feeling, and she was not ready to see it rendered in color. Some truths were easier to carry when they remained interior. But she stopped, just for a moment, her hand on the warm stone of the archway, her markings cycling through violet and rose gold before she pulled them back to neutral. She missed him in a way that had become structural. The Aldhari word for it was Sethinkale, the state of having allowed another person to become load-bearing. Removing them would require renovation, not rearrangement. She had not planned for this. She had been trained for political architecture, for the careful construction of alliances and counterweights. No one had trained her for the specific weight of wanting to hear one particular voice at the end of a difficult day. She let go of the archway and continued to her rooms. 20 days remained until the vote. She would hold. She was built for holding.
What Devari found.
Marcus discovers that humanity's influence runs deeper than anyone in the political sphere has acknowledged. The room was nothing like the Palace of Tides. Upper floor of a building in the university district, cluttered with research materials, holographic displays showing human texts alongside Aldhari commentary. In one corner, an audio system was playing Miles Davis. "The informal archive," Devari said, markings bright with pride. 12 of us. 9 young Aldhari, all with the fine-lined markings of academic houses. Their markings shifted to copper and gold as Marcus entered. Curiosity, welcome, excitement. A tall scholar with spiraling amber markings approached. "Mr. Cole, I am Tessara. I study human narrative structures, specifically what your species calls the novel." She pronounced the English word with care. "I have read 214 of them. Which was your favorite?" She considered this longer than most humans would. "I cannot choose between Middlemark and 100 Years of Solitude. The first is the most precise map of social consciousness I have encountered in any species literature. The second is the most beautiful argument for the proposition that time is not what we think it is." She paused. "Also, I enjoyed the one about the whale." Marcus laughed, and the room warmed visibly, markings brightening, postures relaxing. They had been nervous. Young scholars meeting a human for the first time, worried he would be disappointing. The conversation ranged across music theory, democratic governance, human mortality, the way human languages encoded emotion differently from Aldhari harmonic speech. What struck Marcus was their perspective. They didn't study humanity the way the senior archivists did, as a subject to catalog. They studied it the way someone studies a language they want to learn. A quiet scholar named Loreth, whose markings were almost translucent, said, "Your species changes philosophies the way we change seasons." The Concord was built on the principle that stability is the highest achievement, but some of us wonder whether stability, pursued long enough, becomes indistinguishable from stillness. The room went quiet. In a 10,000-year-old civilization, questioning stability was close to heresy. "Your tradition and our turbulence might be complementary," Marcus said. "You have the depth we lack. We have the restlessness you might need." Devari's markings flared. "This is what I have been trying to articulate for 3 years," and the human said it in one sentence. They walked through the university district as amber light deepened toward evening. Trees lining the streets held their bioluminescence at a low glow reading light. Devari explained, because students had walked here with their texts for so long that the trees had adapted. "I applied to the diplomatic exchange program," Devari said. Their markings had dimmed to muted copper, the one that would send Aldhari scholars to Earth. "I was rejected. They said I lacked sufficient maturity to represent the Concord's values." The Aldhari equivalent of a bitter laugh, a harmonic dissonance the throat produced involuntarily. What they meant was that I am too interested, too eager. They want scholars who will observe from a safe distance. I want to live there. "If Kethani ascends and integration proceeds," Marcus said, "there will be more programs. The informal archives work won't stay informal forever. And if Asharon extracts his concessions, then it takes longer, but it still happens. You know how I know?" Marcus looked at Devari. "Because I've spent the evening with 9 young Aldhari who have already been changed by contact with human culture. That doesn't reverse. Asharon can slow integration, but he can't unread 214 novels." Devari's markings brightened to steady gold, hope that had found a reason to persist. "You are very patient for a species that supposedly lacks patience," Devari said. "I'm an outlier. Don't tell anyone."
The wall at dawn.
2 people who chose each other in a garden now choose each other in the world outside it. She found him in the archives. He was sitting with a young Aldhari she didn't recognize, House Kellorath markings, bright copper, animated mid-sentence. When Marcus looked up and saw her, the young scholar's words trailed off as though they could feel the change in the room's gravity. "Devari," Marcus said. "This is Ivara." The young scholar stood so quickly, they nearly knocked over a crystal matrix. Their markings flashed through copper, amber, and what Ivara recognized with faint amusement as starstruck violet. "Princess Ivara, I study human philosophy and I breathe," Marcus said gently. Devari breathed. "It is an honor." "Marcus has told me about your work," Ivara said. She had not spoken to Marcus in 10 days, but she said it as though they had talked that morning, as though the distance had been nothing. Her markings held steady, and she was proud of that. Devari glanced between them with the particular perceptiveness of someone who studied human emotional expression as an academic discipline. Their markings shifted to a knowing amber, and they gathered their materials with sudden efficiency. "I have research to attend to," Devari said, which was transparently untrue. "Elsewhere, far from here." They left. Ivara watched them go, then looked at Marcus. 10 days, she said. 10 days. The space between them was the width of a reading alcove. It felt like the distance between planets. "Come with me," Marcus said. "Not the garden." She raised an eyebrow, a human expression she had adopted without realizing it. "Where?" Devari mentioned that the western wall of the palace has a walkway that faces the river delta. He said the dawn light from the third moon is worth seeing. "I have lived in this palace my entire life, Marcus. Have you watched the dawn from the western wall?" She paused. She had not. "I've been attending strategy sessions for 10 days, she said. "I should be reviewing Kethani's position papers." "You should," he agreed. He did not move. He simply waited with that particular patience she had once described as water finding its path. "The western wall," she said. The western wall was high and open, the walkway broad enough for two. Below them, Vethara spread toward the river delta in a vast sweep of pale stone and held light. The third moon was low on the horizon, casting long silver through the city's towers. They walked in silence for a while. Not the careful silence of diplomacy, the comfortable silence of two people who had run out of performance. "How bad is it?" Marcus asked. "Sharon's coalition is stable at 4 houses. He won't gain a 5th, but he doesn't need one. He needs enough leverage to make Kethani's ascension conditional." She kept her eyes on the city. "One of his conditions will be a formal review of all pre-integration cultural exchanges, which means you're posting, which means," she gestured between them. This, Marcus repeated. "Sharon will argue that my judgment regarding Earth has been compromised by personal attachment. He does not need to prove it. He only needs to raise the question loudly enough that the uncommitted houses hear it." Marcus leaned against the stone parapet. The pre-dawn air was cool, cooler than he expected at this height, carrying the mineral smell of the river below. "Is he wrong?" Marcus said. Ivara turned to look at him sharply. "About the attachment," he clarified, "not about the compromise." Her markings shifted. In the moonlight, the colors were muted but unmistakable: violet, rose gold, the deep structural warmth she no longer tried to hide from him. "No," she said. "He is not wrong about the attachment. And good, because I've spent 10 days missing you in a way that doesn't fit in a diplomatic report, and I wanted to make sure it wasn't one-sided." She laughed, that low sound, genuine, uncontrolled. "You are the least diplomatic diplomat I have ever met. I'm told it's my best quality." The humor faded, and what replaced it was something quieter and more serious. She moved to stand beside him at the parapet, their shoulders nearly touching, both looking out over the city she had been raised to serve. "Marcus, what happens if Sharon succeeds? If the review removes you from Sethara? Then I leave, and I find a way back. Because the succession is 30 days, but what I feel about you is not on a timeline." He paused. I've been thinking about something Devari said, about how the young Aldhari have already been changed by human culture, how that change doesn't reverse. And I think the same is true for us. Whatever happens with the vote, whatever a Sharon extracts, you and I have already happened. That doesn't unhappen. She was quiet. Below them, the first edge of dawn was beginning to color the eastern sky, not amber yet, but the pale silver that preceded it, the light before the light. In Aldhari culture, Ivara said, there is a concept beyond Velethan, beyond recognition. She turned to face him. It is called Sethenvar Kettle. It means, I choose you as the ground I build on, not for a season, not conditionally, as foundation. That sounds like it has political implications. Everything in the Concord has political implications. I am tired of letting that stop me. Marcus looked at her, this woman who navigated 10,000-year-old political structures with the precision of an architect, who could redirect an entire council conversation without raising her voice, who carried the weight of her family's legacy and her sister's succession and the future of two species' relationship, and who was standing on a wall at dawn, telling him she was tired of being careful. Ivara, he said, I choose you as the ground I build on. Is that how you say it? Close enough. She took his hand. Her skin was warm, the subtle pulse beneath it steady. Not a heartbeat, something closer to music. He had felt it before in the garden in her study. But here on the wall, with the city below them and the dawn coming, it felt like a decision rather than a discovery. The light changed, the pale silver deepened, and the first amber of Sethara's dawn began to spread across Vethara, catching the towers, the river, the stone walkway where they stood. The city woke in layers of color, and from this height, Marcus could see the university district where Devari and the young scholars were probably already working, and the archives, and somewhere below, the river garden where this had begun. 20 days until the vote, Ivara said. 20 days. A Sharon will use us against Kethani, probably. My sister will ask me to distance myself from you. Will you? She laced her fingers through his, a human gesture she had made her own. I will do what is necessary to secure Kethani's succession, she said, and I will do what is necessary to keep you. I have spent my entire life being told these two things are incompatible. I intend to prove that wrong. The dawn reached the wall where they stood, and the stone warmed under their hands. Below, Vethara's morning began, the slow stirring of a city that had existed for millennia, untroubled by the small, enormous thing happening on its western wall. Marcus squeezed her hand. She squeezed back, and they watched the sun rise over a world that was not his, that was becoming theirs, while the future arranged itself into something neither of them could predict, and both of them had chosen.